Sarah and Mark were planting flowers in their front yard, laughing and planning dinner. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon in their quiet neighborhood. They had no idea their angry neighbor Karen was watching from across the street with a gun in her purse, ready to destroy their happiness forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon in our quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind of day where kids ride bikes in circles and the smell of fresh-cut grass floats in the air. Birds were singing in the trees, and a gentle breeze made the leaves dance softly. Everything felt perfect and peaceful. My husband, Mark, and I were in the front yard, planting flowers in our small garden. We had been planning this garden project for weeks. Mark had drawn a little map showing where each flower would go. He was so excited about it, like a child with a new toy. Mark loved gardening more than anything else. He said it made him feel alive, like he was part of something growing and beautiful. When he worked with plants, his whole face would light up with joy. I loved watching him in these moments. He looked so happy and content. I smiled as he knelt in the dirt, his hands gently pressing soil around a bright yellow marigold. His movements were careful and loving, like he was tucking a baby into bed. His laugh was soft, like a warm breeze, as he teased me about my crooked planting. "You're making a mess, Sarah," he said, grinning widely. "These poor flowers deserve better than that." I laughed and flicked some dirt at him playfully. "You're the expert, Mr. Green Thumb. Not all of us have magic hands like you." Mark chuckled and shook his head. "It's not magic. It's just love and patience. You'll get better with practice." We were so happy together. Life wasn't perfect, we had our small problems like everyone else. Money was sometimes tight and we both worked hard at our jobs. But we had each other, and that made everything worthwhile. Mark was my rock, kind, steady, always there with a smile when I needed it most. We had been married for 10 years and every day with him still felt like a gift. In the morning he would bring me coffee in bed. At night we would sit on the porch and talk about our dreams. He wanted to start a vegetable garden in the backyard. I wanted to learn how to paint. We supported each other's dreams no matter how big or small. Our house was small but cozy, a place we had made our own over the years. We had painted every room together, laughing as we got more paint on ourselves than on the walls. The kitchen was yellow, Mark's favorite color. The living room was blue, which made me feel calm and happy. The neighborhood was peaceful, or so we thought. Tree-lined streets with neat houses, friendly neighbors who waved hello. Children played safely in their yards. Old couples walked their dogs in the evening. It seemed like the perfect place to build a life together. But there was one person who made life difficult for everyone. Her name was Karen Mitchell. Everyone in the neighborhood called her HOA Karen behind her back, though we were always polite to her face. Karen was the head of the Homeowners Association, a job she took very seriously, too seriously, most people thought. She was always walking around with a clipboard, wearing her official HOA badge, pointing out violations like a detective on a mission to solve the world's biggest crime. A mailbox that wasn't the right shade of black? Karen would measure it and write you a letter. A lawn that was half an inch too tall? She would bring out a ruler to prove it. A car parked an inch too close to the curb? She would take photos and demand you move it immediately. Karen saw everything and she never let anything go. She would knock on your door with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was always sharp as she listed your crimes against the neighborhood rules. She carried a thick book of HOA regulations everywhere she went. Most people just nodded politely and fixed whatever she complained about. It was easier than arguing with her. But inside, everyone was getting tired of her constant complaints and demands. Mark and I had our share of run-ins with Karen over the years. Last month, she had left a nasty note on our door because our trash cans were still out an hour past pickup time. We had both been at work and couldn't get home earlier. The note was typed and printed, very official looking, threatening us with fines if it happened again. Another time, she complained that our front porch light was too bright and was disturbing the neighborhood's natural darkness. She demanded we change the bulb to a dimmer one. She even brought a light meter to measure how bright it was. Mark always handled Karen with endless patience, much more than I could manage. "She's just lonely," he would say after each encounter. "Her husband died 5 years ago and she doesn't have any children. Let her feel important. It doesn't hurt us to be kind." I wasn't nearly as forgiving as my husband. Karen's constant nosiness and complaints really bothered me. She made the whole neighborhood feel tense and unwelcoming. But I kept my feelings quiet for Mark's sake. He hated conflict and always tried to see the good in everyone. "Maybe she means well," Mark would say. "Maybe she really thinks she's helping the neighborhood." I would just nod and bite my tongue, but privately I thought Karen was just a mean person who enjoyed having power over others. That Saturday afternoon, we didn't know Karen was watching us from her house across the street. Her curtains were always twitching as she spied on the neighborhood. We had gotten used to feeling like we were being watched, but we tried to ignore it and live our lives normally. We were completely focused on our flowers, laughing and talking about our plans for the evening. Mark wanted to grill hamburgers in the backyard. I wanted to make pasta with the tomatoes from our small herb garden. We were debating our dinner choices, playfully arguing like an old married couple. "Come on, Sarah," Mark said, pretending to be serious. "Nothing beats a good burger on a beautiful day like this." "But fresh pasta is so much better," I replied, laughing. "And healthier too." "We can have pasta tomorrow," he said, winking at me. "Tonight should be burger night." We were both smiling and enjoying our silly argument when suddenly I heard her voice cutting through our laughter like a knife. "Mark." "Sarah." Karen's voice was sharp and angry. She stood on the sidewalk in front of our house, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face was twisted with anger in a way I had never seen before. She looked almost scary. She wore her usual outfit, a crisp white blouse that was always perfectly pressed, khaki pants with a sharp crease, and that look on her face that could freeze water. Her clipboard was tucked under her arm, and her eyes were locked on us with pure anger. Mark slowly stood up, wiping the dirt off his hands on his old jeans. He was always polite, even when people were rude to him. "Hey Karen. What's going on? How are you doing today?" "Your garden," she snapped, pointing at our flowers with a shaking finger. "It's completely against the rules. The flowers are too tall and they're not on the approved plant list. I've told you before, Mark. You need to follow the guidelines like everyone else." I felt my stomach tighten with worry and anger. Here we go again, I thought. Another complaint about something completely harmless. Mark stayed calm as he always did. He had incredible patience with difficult people. "Karen, these are just marigolds," he said gently, gesturing to our small flower bed. "They're completely harmless. They're not even that tall, maybe 6 inches high." "Rules are rules," she said, her voice getting louder and more angry. "This neighborhood has standards, Mark. If everyone just did whatever they wanted, this place would look like a jungle. We'd have property values falling and chaos everywhere." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. My patience with Karen had finally run out completely. "Karen, they're just a few flowers," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. "Nobody else cares except you. They're beautiful and they're not hurting anyone." Her cold eyes narrowed at me and I could see real hatred there. "You don't get to decide what matters around here, Sarah. The HOA exists for a very good reason. You think you're above the rules? You think you're special?" Mark quickly put a gentle hand on my arm, giving me that look that meant, "Please let me handle this." He was always the peacemaker, always trying to calm situations down before they got worse. "Okay, Karen," he said in his most soothing voice. "We'll take another look at the rules tonight. Let's not make a big deal out of this. We can work something out." But Karen wasn't finished with us. Not even close. Her face turned bright red, and her whole body was shaking with anger. Her voice was shaking too, but with rage, not fear. "You always do this, Mark," she screamed, and several neighbors came out to see what was happening. "You act all nice and polite, but you never actually listen to me. You never follow the rules. I'm completely sick of it. You're ruining this entire neighborhood with your attitude." I stepped forward, my own patience completely gone now. "Karen, just go home," I said firmly. "This is absolutely ridiculous. You're making a scene over nothing." That's when everything changed forever. Karen's hand moved quickly to her large purse, and before I could even process what was happening, she pulled out a small handgun. My heart completely stopped beating. The whole world seemed to slow down around me. Mark's eyes went wide with shock and fear. He immediately stepped in front of me, protecting me with his own body. His hands went up in the air, trying to show he wasn't a threat. "Karen, whoa, please calm down," he said, his voice steady but urgent. I could hear the fear underneath his calm words. "Put that gun away right now. We can talk about this like adults." "Don't you dare tell me what to do," she screamed, and I could see that she was completely out of control. Her hands were shaking badly, but the gun was still pointed directly at Mark's chest. "I'm done with you completely ignoring me. I'm done with everyone in this neighborhood treating me like I don't matter." I couldn't move at all. My legs felt like they were made of stone. My whole body was frozen with terror. "Karen, please," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. "Please don't do this. Please put the gun down." But she wasn't listening to me or anyone else anymore. Her eyes were wild and crazy, like she wasn't even really there with us. She looked like a completely different person, someone I didn't recognize at all. Then, a deafening crack split the peaceful afternoon air. The gunshot was so loud it seemed to echo forever. Mark stumbled backward, his hands flying to his chest. Bright red blood began to bloom across his favorite white gardening shirt. He fell to the ground, his knees hitting the concrete driveway hard. "Mark!" I screamed, dropping to the ground beside him. My hands pressed against his chest, desperately trying to stop the blood that was flowing out of him. It was warm and sticky, slipping through my fingers no matter how hard I pressed. "No, no, no, please stay with me." His beautiful brown eyes met mine, wide with shock and terrible pain. He tried to speak, but only a weak, gasping sound came out of his mouth. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice already fading away from me. By now, neighbors were coming out of their houses, standing on their lawns in complete shock and horror. Some people gasped and covered their mouths. Others whispered to each other. But nobody moved to help us. Everyone seemed frozen by what they had witnessed. "Call 911. I screamed, my voice raw and desperate. "Someone please call for help right now." Karen still stood there, the smoking gun still in her trembling hand. Her face had gone completely pale, like all the blood had drained out of it. She looked at Mark bleeding on the ground, then at me like she couldn't believe what she had just done. I didn't mean." She stammered weakly, but her words were completely empty and meaningless now. I didn't care about Karen or her excuses. All I could see was Mark, my beloved husband, struggling to breathe. His breathing was getting weaker and more shallow with each second that passed. "Stay with me, Mark," I begged, tears streaming down my face and falling onto his shirt. "You're going to be okay. Help is coming. Just hold on for me." But deep in my heart, I could feel that he wasn't going to be okay. I could feel him slipping away from me. His hand, which had been gripping mine tightly, slowly went limp. His chest stopped moving up and down. The light in his eyes, the light that had made me fall in love with him, slowly faded away. The world went completely quiet. My heart shattered into a million pieces, scattered like broken glass across the driveway. Mark was gone. My husband, my best friend, my whole world, gone forever because of some stupid flowers. In the distance, I could hear sirens wailing, getting louder as they got closer. Police cars came screeching around the corner, their red and blue lights flashing. The officers ran toward us, shouting orders and trying to take control of the situation. One of them grabbed Karen, roughly pulling the gun from her hand and pinning her arms behind her back. She didn't resist at all. She just stood there, staring at the ground with empty eyes as they put handcuffs on her wrists. "Ma'am, you need to step back now," a young police officer said to me. His voice was gentle but firm. He was trying to be kind, but he needed to do his job. I shook my head desperately, still clinging to Mark's lifeless body. They couldn't take him away from me. Not yet. Not ever. The paramedics arrived quickly, kneeling beside Mark and checking for any signs of life. They worked on him for several minutes, but their faces were grim and hopeless. Finally, one of them, a woman with kind eyes, looked at me and slowly shook her head. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, and those 3 words destroyed what was left of my world. I completely collapsed then, my hands still covered in Mark's blood. The concrete driveway was stained red, a cruel reminder of what had just happened in our peaceful neighborhood. Some neighbors were crying now, others were turning away because they couldn't bear to look. The police led Karen to a patrol car, her head hanging down. She didn't look at me as they put her in the back seat. I didn't care about looking at her either. No arrest could ever bring Mark back to me. The hours that followed were like a horrible blur. Police officers asked me question after question, but their voices sounded like they were coming from far away. I answered what I could, but my mind was stuck on Mark's last breath, on the way his hand went limp in mine. Neighbors came by throughout the evening, offering hugs and words of comfort. They brought flowers and food, trying to help in any way they could. But it all felt hollow and meaningless. Nothing anyone could say or do would fill the enormous emptiness inside me. That first night was the longest of my life. I sat alone in our living room, staring at Mark's gardening gloves on the coffee table. The house felt too big and too quiet without his laughter filling it. His warmth was gone forever. I curled up on our couch, clutching his favorite sweater and breathing in his scent. I cried until I had no tears left to cry. The next morning, everything in the neighborhood had changed. People moved quietly, their faces heavy with grief and fear. News trucks parked at the end of our street, and reporters talked into cameras about the shocking neighborhood tragedy. I stayed inside, unable to face them or their questions. My sister Emily drove up from the city that afternoon. She didn't say much, just held my hand and forced me to eat something. She helped me shower and change my blood-stained clothes. I was grateful for her quiet presence. Days slowly turned into weeks. The police investigation moved forward step by step. Karen was charged with second-degree murder. Her lawyer tried to claim it was a moment of passion, that she hadn't meant to actually kill Mark. I didn't care about her reasons or excuses. She had taken everything that mattered to me. The trial took place 6 months later. I sat in the courthouse every day, staring at Karen as she sat at the defense table. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of what she had done had physically crushed her. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing but anger and loss. The prosecution called me to testify about that terrible day. My legs shook as I walked to the witness stand. I told the jury about Mark's kindness, about how he had always tried to be patient with Karen despite her constant complaints. I described how her obsession with neighborhood rules had ended his life. My voice broke as I told them about holding him as he died. The courtroom was completely silent except for my sobs. Karen's lawyer tried to paint her as a stressed woman who had been pushed too far by disrespectful neighbors. It made my blood boil with anger. Mark wasn't disrespectful, he was the kindest, most patient person I had ever known. He was everything she wasn't. The jury didn't believe her defense. After 3 days of deliberation, they found her guilty of murder in the second degree. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. I thought the verdict would feel like justice, but it didn't. No sentence could bring Mark back to me. The courtroom victory felt hollow, like putting a small bandage on a wound that would never heal. Life without Mark was a daily struggle. I couldn't stay in our house, not with the blood-stained driveway haunting my dreams every night. I sold everything and moved to a small apartment in the city, far away from the neighborhood and its painful memories. I kept Mark's gardening gloves as a reminder of his love for growing beautiful things. Sometimes I would hold them and talk to him, pretending he could still hear me from wherever he was now. Grief followed me everywhere like a dark shadow, always there even on the days when I managed to smile or laugh. I joined a support group for people who had lost their spouses. Their stories didn't take away my pain, but they made me feel less alone in the world. Slowly, very slowly, I started to find small moments of light again. A genuine laugh with a friend, a peaceful walk in the park. A new flower blooming in a pot on my apartment balcony, something Mark would have loved to see. I also started volunteering at a community garden where people grew vegetables for families who didn't have enough food. It felt like something Mark would have been proud of. Every time I planted a seed or watered a plant, I thought of him with his hands in the dirt, his smile as bright as the sun. It didn't take away the pain, but it gave me a way to keep him close to my heart. The neighborhood changed after that terrible day. The HOA became much quieter and less strict about small violations. People talked to each other more and checked on their neighbors. Karen's violent actions had shaken everyone, serving as a reminder that life was precious and fragile. Some of our old neighbors reached out to me over the months, apologizing for not stepping in sooner to help with Karen's behavior. I didn't blame them. Nobody could have predicted that she would do something so violent over something so small. 1 year after Mark's death, I finally found the courage to visit his grave. I brought a single yellow marigold, the same kind we had been planting that day. I planted it in the soft soil near his headstone. The sun was setting, painting the sky beautiful shades of orange and pink. I sat there for a long time, talking to him like he was still with me. I told him about my new life in the city, about the community garden and the people I had met there. I told him that I missed him every single day, but that I was learning how to live again. I promised him that I would love him forever. As I finally got up to leave, a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of marigolds through the cemetery. For just a moment, it felt like Mark was there with me, telling me that everything would be okay. I smiled through my tears, knowing that I would carry him with me always, no matter where life took me. Life would never be the same without Mark, but I was slowly learning how to build something new from the pieces. I was living for both of us now, for me, for Mark, and for the beautiful love we had shared that no act of violence could ever truly destroy. The community garden became my second home. I made friends with other volunteers, people who understood the healing power of growing things. We would work together in comfortable silence, our hands in the earth, nurturing new life from small seeds. On quiet Sunday mornings, I would sit in my apartment with my coffee and Mark's gardening gloves, planning what to plant next. I could almost hear his voice giving me advice, encouraging me to try new things. "It's not magic, Sarah," I could hear him saying. "It's just love and patience." And slowly, day by day, with love and patience, I was learning to grow a new life from the ashes of the old one.